I'm excited to talk about your franchise, your brand, everything you've just created now. You're new to the franchise world. I'd love to get a little bit of a backstory though, guys. So somebody take it away. Share with us how this whole thing came to be.
Yeah, so really, essentially, this kind of started out of our garage. We were in the downturn of the market, 07, 08, where we were doing investment properties, flips, and all that fun stuff. And unfortunately, you couldn't do that anymore once the market kind of tanked. So then we had leftover building materials, and we actually started selling those off of Craigslist, the newspaper when it was still a thing, out of our garage. I was sitting there doing designs, meeting with customers. He was doing some assembly of cabinetry. And then it kind of progressed from there where we opened locations, and every time we opened a location, I happened to have a kid. But yeah, it's kind of just progressed, and now we have our 3 locations, and it's something that we've done for a while, and we figured out, the good and the bad, and we really want to help everybody else do kind of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, we really just enjoy the business model. It's one of those things, every day is different, every client's different, every experience is different.
Yeah.
And, we're just trying to look for like-minded people like ourselves to kind of propel the brand and, us coach them through that process.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you guys are incredibly brave to be in that cabinetry business way back though in 2008, 2009. People were going out of business. They weren't starting. They weren't running into the burning building.
Exactly. I know. Who would have thought? We did have real jobs on the side, and it's just, people were looking for something more affordable and that education along the way. So we just kind of progressed. And, with the way our model works, we have the 3 tiers, like a simple, premium, and luxury. So people can, depending on how the market is, they can go into that luxury, or then sometimes some markets call more for that stock, simple offering. So it's just us working that B2B and the B2C with customers. We're able to provide those different options for them based on the market.
All right, let's get a little backstory. All right, so Derek, what were you doing before this business started?
Yeah, so before the cabinetry, you're going way back, so we were pretty young at the time, we were probably in our early 20s at the time. I had a moving company that we were doing. I had a bunch of, group of friends, back when we had energy and,
You're moving every day.
Yeah, moving every day. So we did that. And the way that business worked is it was really, really busy, like the 15th of the month and the 30th of the month, just because that's what everybody's closing schedules were. So we had like maybe a week or 2 every month that I could keep these guys busy doing like investment properties, flips, construction projects on the side, and we kind of utilized the 2 platforms for that. And then like she said, what happened in 07, 08, the economy turned. On the moving side of the business, it wasn't fun anymore. It was foreclosures, evictions, we're getting in some nasty situations, and it wasn't good. So yeah, I mean, so at that point, we had to take a pivot, and luckily we, jumped into cabinetry and haven't looked back ever since.
Wow. Diana, what was life like back then? It took a lot of courage to do this at that time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I was doing, I was a server on the side doing, restaurant and a pizza shop while he was doing the moving, and I was just sitting there answering phones. So, and he kept wanting to dive full deep into the cabinetry side. And I said, we need to get a little bit further before we do that. But thankfully we did when we did, and it just took off from there. So, it's pretty cool.
What is this before kids then?
Yes. Yeah. So our first showroom in Warrington, that one was when we had our first child. I had him in October. I think we signed that lease in September. We had him in October, and then we opened our doors in March of the following year. So we had a newborn in the pack and play in our showroom. As we were meeting with clients, I used to say, shh, I have somebody sleeping in my office right now. If we could just be a little quiet as we walk by the door. And he'd be meeting with customers, and, we were putting the time in, and just making those connections.
Yeah. So how did you guys get through grinding in those early years then, when obviously a lot of people weren't doing a lot of home improvement? Were you focusing on B2C or B2B or both?
So we did a lot of more of like the stock lines at that point, because people were really looking for that more affordable option, but we were working for that B2B. So the B2B is really more of like our cheerleader or our influencer.
Okay.
essentially. So it's almost like, if you think about it, kind of like Sherwin-Williams. You know, you have the paint guy that goes into their house. They suggest where to go to look at paint, get suggestions, figure out which ones they want. But then they essentially usually go in and buy it, or the customer can buy it and they'll come there and they'll paint. So essentially our clients, our B2B clients, they'll send their customers in. Either we'll handle them completely, or they'll tailor to what they need, the contractor to what they need. Sometimes they'll just do most of the legwork and just come to us and give us the design, or we'll meet with the customer, educate them, give them all the options. But a lot of our customers usually like that education, as we're able to give them the full understanding of what a kitchen, which is our biggest sale, is, you know, so they really know what they're purchasing, because it's the heart of the home.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm gonna answer that question a different way. So the way I see it is that, you know, in 07, 08, a lot of people were upside down on their houses, right? So
Right.
they usually owed more than it was currently worth, and they were more or less stuck, right? So at that point, what we realized was people wanted to invest in their homes. People, you know, they were stuck there. They wanted to make the best of it, you know, ride that wave until, you know, whenever the economy came back. Luckily for us today, it's a very similar situation. We're at a spot where, you know, interest rates are just so astronomical right now.
You can't move.
I've had
Right.
people come to me and say, I'm going to downsize, but financially that makes no sense, right?
Yeah,
So
they'd be paying more to downsize anymore.
so we're in a similar situation, just on the kind of opposite end of the spectrum. But
And even through COVID, it's just people were on the more luxury side, and anybody would really almost pay for whatever they can just to get product. And since we are such a big player in the space, we are that, you know, some of the vendors call it VIP, or we're just like the preferred dealer. So we did get priority when we do have that buying power.
Amazing. You guys have kind of proven you are really a recession business. During a down economy, people aren't moving. They're doing home improvement. When people are moving, or there's renovation be done in a new home,
right, new construction.
you got people coming to you, right? Yeah. Then you have the construction side of business. When you guys first started this, and so you opened your first showroom, did you guys do this full time and quit your jobs? Like, what happened?
Yep, full time. Actually, at that point, our showroom hours were longer. I think we were, 9 to 8? I think we were 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sometimes we would take turns, but usually like through the middle of the day, we would both have to be there because it would get busier during the lunch times and right after. But we did that Monday through Sunday because we were open 7 days a week. And we kind of tailored it, especially after COVID. You know, people were able to like slim down their hours, be a little bit more particular, setting up appointments and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean,
In the early days, we put in a lot of hours. And again, it's
found the sweet spot. We've been able to do the homework. So now we know we are open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 5, you know, and just prioritizing those clients, because those are the ones, you know, when you do have those hours and they come in those times, those are the more serious people.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.